a demo session for OA framework. Today I thought of touch basing the architectural overview of the framework for just 15-20 minutes, and then I can just attend your queries in general or in specific to architecture. So before to understand any language, like we all know, so the best way to understand is understanding the architecture properly, so that we can go ahead and do a lot of requirements, and then we can do customizations, personalizations very easily, and then we can achieve the custom requirements. It'll be a little easy when it compares to without knowing architecture and it going. So getting onto the requirement, start working on it. So having said that, let's get started on the architecture. So before going to architecture, just a small intro of how this framework came in, why this OA framework is there, and then why it has been implemented so much in R12, why it was not implemented in 11 pattern or 11i, any of the instance or any of the versions in Oracle EBIS. So history of it starts from around Oracle Apps 10. So when they started using Oracle started using HTML pages and JTF. So there was a different pages altogether. There was no pages called OA framework pages, but they had self-service pages on the browser. It's not on the forms, it's just on the browser, that is HTML page and JTF pages. So they had a lot of security issues, and then Oracle is number one with security. So they started going with the JSP, and then JSP had a performance issue. So the team of Oracle sat together, and then Oracle experts sat together, and then all the framework which is available freeware, that is in Java, that is like Spring framework, and then EJBs, and then J2EEs. So whatsoever the technology, just got all those requirement or all those framework concepts and then put together for Oracle applications. That's why it became OA framework, that is Oracle Apps framework. So in whenever you're talking about EBIS, then OA framework is a page. It is a robust page, and then it is self-secured. It is secured like too much when it compares with forms, and then you have a methodology to work on or to understand the OA framework pages. So having said that, what it makes advantage, or what exactly why it is being, it's called as robust, self-secured, and when it compares to form, what are the performances. So it has a lot of factors in it. So we'll touch base on those factors today. In the architecture wise, why it is called it, or it says like self-secured and robust. So having said that, let's get started on the architectural overview. So in architecture of a framework, so it's a Oracle is only specific to Oracle EBIS only. So this OA framework is only specific to Oracle EBIS. So it has architecture overview like BC4J, UIX, and OA extensions. So these are all the main three components in it. So on a first overview, if you say, okay, OA framework architecture, then it is a BC4J, UIX, and OA extension. So what is BC4J? Even so, Fanidhar, I guess you've worked on forms, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So even in forms, we write a business logic and triggers. So there are a lot of triggers like program units or triggers. So whatsoever it is, so we write a business logics in that. So exactly the same way in the framework, it's BC4J, that is business component for Java, where we'll be writing business logics in Java. But in framework or the JDeveloper tool, which is given out of the box by Oracle, will write around close to around 60% of our code. So only 40% of our functional logic or a business logic we have to incorporate it. So this is BC4J, where we write a business logic. UIX is like when it compares with two forms, then FMB. FMB is just a front-end form. So exactly the same thing as UIX. Then OA extension. So what are these extensions? Even in forms, we do a custom.pll in order to customize it. or in order to extend the existing functionality. So the custom.pll, where we incorporate our customizations and all those things. So that is what OA extension is when it compares with OA framework. So the basically three components are there: BC4J, where we write our hardcore business logic, and UIX, it's just like just a front end page, and OA extension. OA extension is like just extending the standard functionality in order to achieve the custom functionality as per the requirement. So finally, you can just stop me whenever you have a doubt. Having said that, it also have application authorizations and authentications and Java services, and OA framework is a programmatic glue, so it can get integrated with any of the technology as well. So you can communicate to third party from, or you can just communicate to any third party system on the web very easily using your framework. That is just an overview. So overview components, major three components, that is BC4J, UIX, and OA extensions. So that is just an overview. Now coming into detail, that is MVC architecture. So what is MVC architecture? So whenever you want to start up with whatever project is, either it can be a development, it can be a customization, or it can be a personalization, it is very important to know what is this MVC architecture is. So it is model, controller, model, and a view is V. V is a view and C is controller. So model, view, controller is what we say MVC architecture. So in this architecture, major three components. Let me just get started with an explanation of this, how exactly it works. So let me just start with view. View is a view format to present the data from a model to the user. So forget about the model as of now. View is just a page. If you show a page, you have seen an OAF page. So whatever the page you have seen, it's just a view component. So the whole page, so the page you see is a view. Underlying, there is a controller. Underlying the view, there is a controller. When it exactly compares with forms, if I have to make it a little simple, then forms you enter, and then you enter in a text input field, and you tab out, then there you can write a trigger when validate item, to control the user action. So there we write it in the trigger, but here we write it in the controller part. So here controller controls the user actions. And what is a model? So model which encapsulates the business logic, or whatever the program unit or extra libraries, whatever you use in forms. So those are in order to achieve the business logic. So exactly the same thing we write it in the model. So when it compares to forms, there is almost a very much similarities are there. So view is a page. So when it compares with form, it's a FMB, and the controller is you write a triggers in forms, but in OA framework we write a controller channel. Model which encapsulates data or business logic, where we write our program units in forms, but as in framework we write in a model components. So this is the major MVC architecture. Any doubt in this, Fanidhar?
I'm good.
Sorry, unable to hear you.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this MVC architecture can be flexible as well. So if I come back to MVC architecture, you can see an arrow mark in between all the three models. So view always communicates to the controller, and then controller as a control in order to communicate to the model, get the data back to the controller, and then push it back to the view. So once we start our curriculum, then we have a lot of exercises to be performed, so that you can just once you start doing your hands-on exercises, it will be very comfortable for you to understand how exactly this MVC architecture works. Flexible architecture. So this MVC architecture is flexible architecture, that is view, controller, and the model. So view is just a HTML representation of the page. Controller controls the user action. BC4J, as we discussed, that is business logic encapsulated using the Java components. Okay, coming to framework architecture, how exactly? Okay, now there is a function, or you open if it's home page, and then you click on a function in order to open an OAF page. So what exactly happens internally? So we have seen the architecture. Now MVC architecture, we know, okay, there is a page, there is a controller, there is a model. So all this interact each other in order to display a page. But how exactly this page comes up? So that's what it's basically. It is very important to understand how this particular page, when you click on a request of OAF framework page, how exactly it comes up. So there is a client, three-tier architecture again: client, application server, and data server. So database server. So client from the browser. So when the browser, you just click on any of the function ID, there is a unique ID which is being passed to the application server, that is called listener. So even if we have to open any forms, so there is a listener, that is a form listener which opens up, and then that will shoot up JInitiator, and in turn it shoots up the forms. So exactly the same way, whenever you click on an OAF page, a listener is opened up. How it this listener is an Apache listener or Apache web user. So it opens up. How exactly it opens up? It passes the path.doc ID inside this listener. It opens up, and then it will be given to application server, that is a servlet engine, a logical an entity. It encapsulates logical engine called servlet engine, which has UIX, OA controller, BC4J, and then MDS. I'll come to MDS in some time. Once this is done, so when you click on a browser, there is a path.doc ID, or there is a unique ID which is being passed to the application server, which opens up the web listener. So that is web Apache server. So there it interacts with servlet engine, which in turn has UIX, OA controller, BC4J, and then MDS. So that again interacts with database server, picks up the metadata repository, I explain you component by component, and then goes back to the browser. So what does this servlet engine? So this is a logical engine. So UIX is a page, and then OA controller, as we've seen, the OA controller controls the user action, and then BC4J is business component for Java. So only thing we have not tested based on MDS and then metadata repository and data. So whenever in OA framework pages, they have used J2SE technology in order to store a page. So how, EJB technology in order to store it. So how exactly, if you see a page, OA framework page, this is no, you can't see or you can't get a whole page in application server. So in forms, if I have to go to the forms, I can go to any product tab and then FMB or forms US, you get FMB5. But unlike in framework, you will not get it in application server. So you have to go to the database. So all the pages gets imported into the database. When it compares how exactly it gets stored in database. So if you just imagine a whole OA framework page, and then divide or make small pieces of the OAF page. So that is called, every small piece is called as metadata. So that metadata gets stored in the database. So that is called as metadata repository. The whole page is not a page at the back end. It's just a couple of rows in the database tables. So these are the data tables, and this we call it as metadata repository. So whenever there is a unique ID passed from the server or from the client, unique ID passes from client, and then it passes to the listener, and again in turn it goes to the servlet engine. Again it goes to the database, which will pick, using that unique ID, it picks what are the components for that particular page. So once it is being grabbed, it comes back to the servlet engine. It attaches the BC4J. I'll explain you in a while what is BC4J and its component. And then it has any controller action, it goes there, and then page is ready to render. Again it hits back to the listener, the page opens up. So when the page is opening up, you see a whole OA framework page as a page, but in turn the design would be metadata pieces, the pieces of component of the page is being rendered as a page. It's not exactly a full page, whatever you can imagine. So framework pages are like a small pieces or metadata rendered as a page. Fanidhar? Any doubts?
No. Do you by any chance know what tables it is stored page?
Yeah, sure. There are 4 tables in it. That is JDR. We call it as JDR tables. One is JDR attributes, one is JDR component, another is JDR trans and JDR attribute components. So there are 4 tables. If you just Google it for JDR tables, then you get a list of tables. And then tech stack components. So we have seen how exactly the whole page comes up. So it passes a unique path, a unique ID, that is path.id, ID, which is to the application listener, application server. Listener opens up, comes to the servlet engine, and then it goes to the database, picks up all the metadata for that particular ID which is being passed from the client, picks up all the metadata and comes to the servlet engine, relates everything, that is BC4J components, OA controller, and then it readies for the render. It again hits the listener, it goes to the browser. It renders the metadata, pieces of metadata is being rendered as a page. So tech stack component, as we have seen, BC4J is there, business component for Java. So as I explained before, BC4J is like writing a business logic. When it compares to form, it's like program units or the libraries which you want to add in order to achieve a business logic, custom business logic. So that's where in OA framework we use BC4J, and UIX is a page, and OA extension, and then it's a programmatic glue, and so on and so forth. And BC4J, we have, from the starting of the slide, we were just taking a look at what BC4J, what is a business component for Java, what exactly it contains of. So it will be good to know what exactly it contains of, so that we can understand and then we can start working on framework really easily. So BC4J is, or in MVC architecture, I'll just finish the slide and then explain you or what are the components inside the BC4J. So in our MVC architecture, so view was a page and controller controls the user action. Coming to the model, so what is there inside the model? Inside this model, where we see onion structure. Inside the particular model component, we see an onion structure. If you just consider, take a piece of onion or take one whole onion, cut it into 4 pieces, and one piece looks like this. So this is an onion structure. It starts from the database. At the bottom, that is in yellow color, DB, and on top of it, entity object, on top of it, view object, on top of it, application module, and on that, OA controller. So let's get started from database, and then we'll understand what entity object, we'll understand what is a view object, we'll understand what is application module, OA controller. So database, so there is, as we all know, so there is a table which gets stored in the database, and then the values will be there in the database. So that's known knowledge. So what is this entity object? Say for example, just imagine any of the real-time scenarios. So you create a table in your custom top or custom schema, and then you create a synonym in apps schema in order to access that particular table when it's required. The logic is like this. So in real time, what we do, we create a table and a particular different schema altogether. So say for example, for custom table, we create a XX schema, and then we create a synonym inside apps so that we can get access to that particular schema objects. Exactly the same thing, the entity object. In order to access the table inside the framework, we create an entity object. So it's like a synonym of a table in the database inside the framework. It is like a synonym of the table inside the framework database. So that's, we create an entity object in order to handle that table. Why we have to create a synonym in order to handle, or why do we have to access this particular database table inside our framework? As simple as this, if we want to do a DML operations like insert, update, delete. So in order to access that, we create an entity object inside the framework. So what is the view object on this entity object? So we got access to the table, and then for that table we have to write a query in order to display it to the user. So we write a view object, and after this view object, imagine a package. Say you're writing a PL SQL package, you have a number of select statements, say 100 select statements. So 100 select statement is encapsulated in one particular package. So it encapsulates, or it holds one package, one stored package is consists of 100 select statement. So where do we store it? So imagine a scenario where if there are you are developing a common or complex page where you have 100 view objects. So it has to get encapsulated somewhere so that we can get access to that particular package and that particular query. So where exactly it gets encapsulated? That is in application module. Application module encapsulates view object, and the OA controller controls the user action, or it has, or we have to write a code in order to communicate to application module and tell them, okay, this is the select statement which we have to execute at the runtime as per our requirement. So whenever we see BC4J components, BC4J components are application module, view object, and entity object. So this three collectively called as BC4J. This three is collectively called as BC4J. That is application module, view object, and an entity object is collectively called as BC4J. So when you see at bottom of the slide, the data push, data flow, down stack push, and then pull. So when a request goes, or when a request comes from the client, so what exactly happens? It touch bases the controller, it touch bases the application module, and then the view object, entity object, and the database. So first time it hits to the database as informs. So whenever you query control F11, if you just query it, then it hits the database, gets the value. While coming back, so what is the difference between a form and a framework? Why we are going? So both technologies are doing the same thing. So why do we have to go back, or why do we say that this particular framework is robust? If we have to say that, or there should be an advantage for this particular framework. If you see, clearly observe, there is a, after database, after every level, there is a black mark which has been marked between this all these three layers, or all the 4, 5 layers, whatever we have. So all these 4 layers works as a cache framework. So in real time, so every comment or every layers, in between every layers, there is a cache. First time it goes for a straight shot, as we know, it contacts all the layers and goes to the database, gets the data, get a hold of a data. While coming back, what exactly happens is it keeps on putting in the cache. So all the whatever the fetched value will be kept in the cache between. Cache means a runtime memory or a heap memory which stores value for that particular session. So you close the window, all the cache gets deleted. So entity object, between entity object and database there is a cache, it puts the value there, and then between a view object and an entity object, you put a value there, it puts the value there. So that's a cache. Cache basically do caching on every layer and then pushes the data outside. That's why whenever you open an OAF page for the first time, so it does take a time when it compares with the second time. When you click on a request, observe it, it takes some time, it just keeps on processing. So what exactly, why it's processing is, why it's bringing the data, it put all the information in the cache and then gets the data to the user. Second time, when a user requests the data, what exactly happens is it comes and checks in the cache. If value is there in the cache, it just throws back. It will be much faster. It doesn't go to the database every time. So that's a very big advantage in framework in real time in order to avoid performance when it compares with form performance. Any doubts?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So that BC4J, as I said, business component for Java. So there are three components in it, that is application module, entity object, and the view object. So application module, container for BC4J objects, that which holds the select statement in the real time. The view object is presented data to the framework. Entity object encapsulates business rule. So what is this business rule? Say for example, you want to default the data, or you want to validate at the entity level or the database level. You want to validate some of the columns. Then entity level validations will be there. That's why this entity objects is being used. Inside the model, how exactly this Java functionality works. So that's what we are trying to understand. So first and foremost, let us understand what is a framework, or exactly framework, what exactly all these connections are. So how exactly it works inside the framework or inside the model components. So model relationship is what the heading. So inside the model, there are three components as we saw. There is application module, entity object, and a view object. So how exactly it basically interacts, or what exactly it holds. Let me just start from entity object, that is from in onion structure, that is the first layer. So name EOIMPL, so that's our file. So what is this name? It's a custom name which extends OA entity IMPL. So what is this OA entity IMPL? So imagine an API. So say for example, if I have to just give a small example, is OE order pub is a standard API in Oracle ERP. Whenever we have a requirement, if you're working in SCM, then OE order pub is an API, or any other API for that matter. The API is already predefined package. We just use it and then pass our custom values in order to achieve some functionality of the standard. So exactly the same thing, OA entity IMPL is a standard API, that is an interface class in framework. We extend it, we extend all the properties of that in order to achieve our custom. So we extend this OA entity IMPL interface or features, properties of the standard entity IMPL. We'll pull it into our custom entity IMPL and then try to achieve our custom requirement. So exactly the same thing. Second one is view IMPL, which extends OA view object IMPL. So we inherit the standard properties of OA view object IMPL into our view IMPL in order to achieve the custom requirements, in order to achieve our custom functionality. And application model, coming to application model. So this is root name, so that's a custom name. Custom name application module IMPL inherits OA application module IMPL. So it basically inherits the standard property into our custom. So what does this all three hold? So what does this all three interface files or standard framework file hold? All these three holds the standard validations. So for application module, these are all the basic rules. So it's already predefined and kept for us. We just have to use it, and then we have to just start working on it so that any errors, it has been rectified then and there. So that's why we do import all this, and we do inherit all the standard functionality, and then we will cap the standard functionality and then build our custom functionality. After that, what are this OADB transaction? So that is the front end. From the front end, we have to get connected to the database in order to interact with the database, or in order to do any transaction with the database. So how do we do it? Using OADB transaction. Again, this is an interface file which has all JDBC connections. We don't need to specifically do. If you just are a Java developer, then it is your responsibility to connect to the database, and then execute it, and then get the result back into Java code. So instead of that, there is a standard interface file which we use. So how do we use? We use from the basic layer, that is entity object. So from entity object we uses OADB transaction in order to get the connection. So one is application module also has this extra privilege which uses OADB transaction and get the connection. So as I said, application module is a container, and then it provides a transaction context. So in real time, when we are doing hands-on exercises, then you can see all this feature in our hands-on exercises, that is transaction contacts, and the database connection may be nested. We can create complex application module. It's like nested application module. So entity object holds business rules and its logic we can use for DML operations. And then you can also link entity objects to entity objects. That is like master-child relationship you can create. And view object, also this view object is a select statement, and you can also connect to view object using a view link. So all these concepts are clearly covered in training session, full-fledged explanation, and then you do have a hands-on for it. You'll get a documents for it, and then transactions, OADB transactions, you will see that, or any real-time scenarios you will see that OADB transactions. And this is how the framework looks. It's a 11i page, so nothing much in the framework. It has been changed from 11i to R12. So a couple of classes has been changed, and the version of JDeveloper has been changed. So you work in R12 or in 11i, doesn't matter for a or development point of view. So this whole framework, whole page, as I said, the whole page is being rendered as a page, but it's not exactly a page. It's Java beans which is being stored in the backend. So that's exactly what I am explaining. I'm just putting 3 bean values, so I don't want to put too much and confuse. So this is a header, supplier is a header, so it's called as header bean. Submit button, button is bean. So every component on page is a bean. So message text input bean, message text input bean, submit button bean, and this is a result table bean. So it goes on, and this is how we develop the structure window. So whenever we create a table or we create a page, so this is how exactly it looks like. And region styles, when it comes to region style, there is a lot more to do. We do have a hands-on for that, and then we can extend different regions into the page whatever we are creating. So all those features can be seen. And then attribute sets. So in order to improve the UI features, we use attribute sets. And data sourcing, bindings, whenever you are doing view instance. So again, the concept of view object again gets divided into view attributes. So in a select statement, view object is a select statement. So select statement means you're selecting a couple of columns, and so the whole select statement we call it as a view object. And when it comes to, when we say view attributes, then we are selecting only a couple of columns in it. So that's why it's called as view attributes. So all those data binding we will visit again, and this is how it looks like. And personalization, we'll definitely touch base on it. So what is a personalization? Personalization is a framework altogether by itself, without writing a line of code, without bouncing an Apache, or without doing any of the Java code. We do a personalization on the front end. It doesn't require an Apache bounce. It doesn't require a server start, restart, nothing. So you just do a change and then you take a look at it then and there. So that's called personalization. Then very beautiful framework. When it compares to form, yes, it has a lot of advantages with it. And then controller. So controller, so OA controller IMPL is a standard interface file which we use in order to extend it into our custom controller file in order to achieve it. So in controller, when it comes to controller, so we finished the model. So in MVC structure, we finished the model, and then now we are moving into the controller part. And then we've also finished the view, and then the last component is controller. So controller is a standard OA controller MPL. In controller, there are 2 requests, that is post and get. So get and post requests are 2 major important requests in the framework or in the controller, whatever we create or we use. So what is get? When the page is loading. So when you compare with forms, pre-form trigger. So when page is loading, or pre-form triggers like when form loading, or when new block instance. So all those are all when the page is getting loaded or when form is getting loaded. So exactly the same thing. So it doesn't have a lot of methods. It only have 2 methods, majorly to do with get and post. So in get, there is only one method, that is process request. When page is loading, if you have to auto populate or auto query something, and then you want to change the layout, or you want to design page when the page is loading, or create a different region when the page is loading, then we use process request method in the controller. And request, when the page is already loaded, you want to add some validations to a particular field, or when you click on a button, the event, and then you want to check what are the values which has been for that particular event. So all those things can be done in process form request. And one more thing is process form data, which has an underlying feature in order to get connected to the database using a view object. So it is not recommended by the frame or Oracle itself that do not customize this particular method. So 90% of your case, or 99% of in real time, will not touch base on this process form data method. So it's just information to know. And there is another concept called OA control forms. We can get user ID, responsibility ID, and all the org ID. So all those informations we can get from environment variable. But when it compares with OA framework, OA page context is where we get all the informations of username, ID, current responsibility, all so on and so forth. So there are a lot of information you can get. So we saw model component or model interaction. So here we are seeing with model and the controller how exactly happens. From the I'll start with AMIMPL. So AMIMPL also hold this application module IMPL. OA application module IMPL, that's a standard interface which inherits into our custom one, and then it refers OA page context because it holds all the information for that, and the whole page is considered as bean. So whole page is considered as bean. The whole OA framework is OA framework page. The OAF page is considered as a page bean. So that's what I'm referring here. So OA page bean, so which uses or which refers OA page context in order to get a request forward. So again, there is a client and server tier architecture. Client tier, middle tier, and the server tier. So client tier is on a client side. Again, in the middle tier or on the application tier, again 2 levels is being bifurcated: client side and the server side. Client side, where you can get who logged in and the username, responsibility ID, and then what is the application model definition, what is the method name. So that is called as WebUI as a folder. And then server side, OADB transaction, AM finds how to find a particular select statement inside the application module and how to get connected to database server. So those are all other concepts which will be text based. So, so all this being referred from OA framework developer guide and JDocs folder, and then that's about it. Thank you so much. I guess. Any doubts?
No, good. So tell me one thing, how much percent of Java is needed for this?
If you're doing the close to around, you need around 30-40% of Java in order to understand all the concepts.
New page.
Uh-huh.
So how much Java do we need to write that logic, whatever it is? I was just thinking.
How many? I'm sorry, I didn't get it. I didn't get your question.
If we need to write the logic, right?
Uh-huh.
The controller, what you mentioned, we need to write the logic in the control.
Yeah.
So how much Java do we need?
See, this framework has a limited Java concepts in it. So you can use, or first time if you just understand, then you can use the same logic or same code. You can reuse it. So for controlling or doing a medium size of OA framework development, you don't require much of Java knowledge. Basic, around 30%, as I said, around 30% of Java knowledge will definitely help you or take you to comfort level. But when you're doing a complex, then you definitely require some good knowledge of Java.
All right. All right. So we are done with this demonstration.
Yes. Yeah,
Understood. So where are you